Hello and welcome to Brian Moore's Full Contact with the Telegraph. The Six Nations resumes this weekend after a weekend off, and all eyes will be on Twickenham this Saturday as two old enemies, England and Wales, will face off. Both sides go into the game level with one win and one defeat so far. Defeat this weekend will end any chances of lifting the Six Nations for either side, but both sides have been given injury boosts before the game. England have sales centre Manu Tuilagi to call upon once again, and meanwhile Wales have Talupi Faletau available for selection. We'll get stuck into the game in detail with the former Wales number 8, Scott Quinnell, who will join us later. Off the pitch, the Six Nations were forced to deny claims made last week that South Africa were set to join the Six Nations from 2025 onwards. A story published by a national newspaper last weekend suggested the world champions would replace Italy in the new format, but that has since been denied. We'll be speaking to the former Italy captain and head coach of Benetton Treviso, Marco Bortolami, about how Italian rugby reacted to this story and also about Italy's current role in the Six Nations, with the Italians without a win in the competition since 2015. We'll also look ahead to the rest of the weekend's action, and we'll be recapping the best of the Premiership, and as ever, we'll get stuck into some of your questions too. Delighted to welcome back alongside me the former England centre Tom May. Hello, Tom.
Hi, good to be here.
Yeah, one win, one defeat. England heading into round 3. Whoever loses this is going to be scrapping for 5th place. Whoever wins it stays with an outside chance of a title shot. So, what have you made of England so far?
I think, look, we knew they were going to get a win against Italy, and I think it's always difficult for teams to come away with anything but getting criticised slightly when they play against Italy, because supporters just expect a complete runaway landslide. I was so disappointed they lost up in Edinburgh. Yeah. I think I was in here in the week building up to it, and I think they were in the driving seat and they blew that opportunity, which I think is what makes it so disappointing. They showed some good glimpses of what they were capable of, and I think the likes of Stewart, Malins, Marcus Smith have shown us what the future of England rugby can be about.
The problem with Italy was it was a completely revised team as well, with all new units all around the place. And they were expected to do what they did, routine win. All I would say is they scored 5 tries away from home. France scored 5 tries against Italy at home. So they did what they had to do. But coming back from that, England have yet to play at Twickenham. They've got the best percentage win ratio of any home nation side by quite a long way, actually. 85% of games they've won at home. So if they were to do that, then they've got Ireland at home, and everything, is still on track. But it is, whilst you wouldn't say a must-win games in terms of Eddie Jones's tenure, because he's not going anywhere, so it's pointless even suggesting that. For this tournament, it is a seminal moment.
It is, and listen, I think their biggest problem, they've got France in Paris last up, and having been in Paris, they are a force to be reckoned with. That said, I think the two games they do have at Twickenham this year in Wales and Ireland's going to be incredibly tough. Are Wales capable of turning up to Twickenham and turning over England at home? I don't think so. That said, I don't think they're going to roll over like I think many people might think they're capable of doing. I think they will be heavily boosted by that win that they got against Scotland. And having started off so badly, I think that they're not going to be that bad again, and so England need to improve.
Well, last time you were here, we were talking about considering alternative options to Manu Tuilagi. Now, fast forward to this week, and he's fit again. He's going to go straight back in, isn't he? He's got to.
Well, he is, and look, for the purpose of winning a game this weekend, that's exactly what needs to happen. My point being is, long term, England don't know where the replacement for Manu Tuilagi is coming from, and they don't play that. Well, they don't give opportunities to players that have the potential to replace him enough as I think they should.
As a like for like, or just as a?
I'm not sure there is a like for like. But we need a a force to be reckoned with in the midfield. Atkinson hasn't really been given a shot from Gloucester. I think he could have a role to play in the midfield. I think if you have two balanced players in the midfield that are fairly similar in the way they play, I don't think England have enough go forward, and I think that's been shown, especially up in Edinburgh, actually.
Well, when you're talking about him at centre, but I mean, last time out, he was used as a winger in the autumn series, but if he is brought straight back in, can you see it anywhere other than centre?
I can't.
Well, I can, but I don't think he should be.
No, yeah. I think if he is going to come back in, yes, I probably agree with you then. If he is going to come back in, it should be in the centre. But he is more than capable of playing on the wing. And actually, when he is on the wing, it's almost like his shirt number is just a number, because he appears off those shoulders. He runs into the tight spaces that still attracts defenders and creates the space on the opposite side of the field.
Well, Tom, you've been an international centre. You've lined up opposite Tuilagi. What is it about him that makes him such a difficult opponent?
He's an absolute nightmare. I remember playing a Northampton against Leicester game, which is obviously a big derby in the Midlands. And all week I knew I was defending at 13, which is obviously quite a tough place to defend anyway. And my whole thought was, this guy is not going to get past me. So I was getting up quickly in defence, chop tackling as much as I could. First 8 tackles, fine. But he just does not stop, doesn't go away. It's not like you can whack him and think, if you leave a mark, someone will try and, I'll run a decoy line next time. He just doesn't care. He'll keep coming back. He's relentless. The power doesn't go anywhere. After those 8 tackles, the next one was a fend and a bump. Then he scored a try, and it was like the board came up and I was off. But I think when you play against someone like that, your focus is on him. It has to be, because if you're not right, or you're not in the right position physically, he'll either brush you off, or he'll just go straight over the top of you. Now, that then routes you to the spot as a defender, which ultimately creates the space that teams are trying to so desperately
and if people are clever, they fix you as a defender, and there are gaps inside, outside for runners, long balls across, short balls back inside, and so on. So you it's effectively this, isn't it? You can put that defender where you want him and work around that.
And I also think with Manu, it's not just one defender. In the build-up to a game, if people know that Manu Tuilagi is playing, they'll speak to inside and outside saying, right, you have to support whoever is marking Manu Tuilagi. And that's what draws the numbers into him, and that's what creates the space. It's when he has the ball in hand, but also, more importantly, when he doesn't.
Well, the big one is coming up, or a big one is coming up at Twickenham this Saturday. England play Wales. Why don't we get the considered and measured thoughts of the former Welsh number 8, British Lion as well, Richmond teammate of mine a long time ago, Scott Quinnell. Hello, Scotty.
Moro, how are you?
I'm all right. Can
I just say, it's good to hear your voice again. We're missing it on the TV. I tell you what, after the time, the commentary was better than the games, let me tell you. You're missed, my friend.
What was the... Look, I mean, when I played, the Wales game wasn't quite as big as it had been before and after, because Wales weren't quite as good. But what was it like in your day when you came back to Wales?
Well, very similar to your story. Unfortunately, I was on the other side of it. It was, you know what I mean? England were building up. Well, I played against you in 1994 in Twickenham, where you had a monster pack. An absolutely monster pack. It was a great thrill of mine. Played against Dean Richards, and we could hardly get the ball off him all day. He shoved up his jumper and just was the big boy in the yard. You couldn't get the ball off. It was just absolutely incredible. And but we just lost you that day, but we won the championship in '94, and and then England were building towards the 2003 World Cup. They had the side that was building. Obviously, Johnny Wilkinson's came into it. Lol was there, and of course, for me, right, the best player England had was Richard Hill, the number 6 Richard Hill. I thought he was out. I was lucky to play with him on Lions doors. I was unfortunate to play against him in a Welsh jersey, England jersey, because he was some player. He was some player, and that win in '99 that we snuck in Wembley. We actually played better in 2000 in Twickenham, where we went 22 points to 3 up, and then all of a sudden Johnny Wilkinson grabbed the ball, kicked it in the corner. You had a scrum, line out, drive. I think he beat this 3-22 in the end, but that's not the way we wanted to win anyway. You know what I mean, right? That's not the way we wanted to win. But yeah, England was certainly the side that were building towards that World Cup.
Look, Scott, both teams have got players who are potentially going to come back. We've discussed Tuilagi for England. If Faletau is available, is he going to come straight back in?
I think so. When you have a look, we're looking for a bit of experience especially in the pack where you lose. We've lost the likes of Tipperick, we lost, of course, Alwyn Jones, Ken Owens. We've lost a huge number of caps in there, and I thought Jack Morgan did well against Scotland. I thought Aaron Wainwright has been playing well. Ellis Jenkins, Tame Basham has been outstanding for the last Autumn Internationals and Six Nations. But we need a bit of experience. We need an old head. We need a British and Irish liar that can come and show a little bit of composure, with a little bit of ball carrying, a bit wider if we're going to get into those channels, which I know Wayne Jones wants to do. So I would definitely start with him, and I'd say to Talupa, hey, come on, we need a big 50-55 minutes out of you, and then we can bring some of the other boys on.
Scott, 2 other players that are pushing for a start. Jonathan Davis, talking of old heads, and he came on obviously against Scotland, and then Josh Adams, who's back to fitness. Would you bring them straight back in? I would, because again, going for that experience, Jonathan Davis has been sort of in and out of the squad. Obviously, they brought him back in. He had a cameo appearance against Scotland, came on, did well, showed up that defensive line, and as well, he's got that left boot that has been so devastated in the Lions jersey and the Welsh jersey. I think he needs to come back in. And again, Josh Adams, I think he's world class. But on the wing. If we play him on the wing, he has the ability to be able to score tries. The one thing, Scott Williams, he scored a try on the weekend for Llanelli. You know what I mean? He hasn't been in the squad, and at 12 we need a solid 12-13 partnership, and I know Tompkins has played 12 there. Owen Watkins has done well, but I would definitely going to need the old head of John Davis in there on the weekend, especially if you're going to unleash your Manu Tuilagi on us.
Scott, we've been talking, and I've been majoring this season on the home advantage point, and I think that the display that Wales put in against Scotland, had they not had the sustaining crowd behind them all game, and we know what it's like when you're at home, the Principality, and everything you do is being rowed on. That was a sort of game similar to Ireland, who weren't at home in France. Had they been at home, it might have gone the other way, because it was very small margins. It's just that sustaining bit, and I just wonder this: it was a tremendously gutsy performance by the Welsh forwards and the Welsh ball carriers. Can they do that when they're away from home? If England get the crowd behind them, which is a different proposition, with England's win percentage, being as high as it is at Twickenham.
That's a very polite way of saying, are the prawn sandwich brigade going to do us over on the weekend? Just after, not my words, Boro. I can't remember who said them now, but they definitely were said. It's one of those where you go to Twickenham and once they get the singing, slow, start singing, and it's just an incredible atmosphere. It's an intimidating atmosphere because normally when they start singing, you know what I mean, England are putting the ball in the corner, they want to drive line outs, they want to do, they want to get a scrum, they want to get the scrum going. So if they are singing, you know that England are on the front foot. But definitely, I think the home advantage is absolutely massive. We've seen that in the championship this year so far. As well as the Principality is intimidating for some of the other sides that come down. It's definitely going to be a factor. But it's strange though because we won the championship last year. We won Grand Slams before where we've had 3 games away because normally it's easier for us to have England and Ireland at home because we know if we go to Dublin or we go to Twickenham, they're tough games to win, and then if you can sneak there, the French one for us then is the big one at home because, if you can beat that French side, you've got an opportunity of winning stuff. But when you go to Paris, it's a different sort of atmosphere. I think Paris has been in the past. It's an atmosphere. I just love playing in France. I just absolutely love playing in Paris. I thought the atmosphere was absolutely outstanding there. But the one place I didn't enjoy playing was Twickenham, and that's because when England get on top of you, the crowd starts singing. It's a very intimidating place.
Scott, look, I mean, realistically, either side loses this weekend. They're scrapping to not finish 5th. Now, bearing in mind Wales are the defending champions and taking into account the vast number of injuries that they've had to key players. How, if it were to go wrong for Wales, how are the Welsh public, that's a sensible Welsh public, rugby public, going to react given all those factors?
Do you know what? It's one of those situations where I thought the big game for us was last week against Scotland. You know what I mean? If we'd have lost that one, then it's going to be a really disappointing because then it'd be tough to go to Twickenham and it'd be tough when the French pack comes over and the power of that French team comes over with the likes of, Sean Edwards wanting to come back and make a statement in the Principality Stadium, and then we'd had Italy at home. If you've won that, so winning that one, it really, said, okay, no problem, we're in this championship. Now we need to go and compete. We need to go and compete in Twickenham, and that's the big thing for me, is we didn't compete in Ireland. I thought our contact area wasn't enough. We were second best in the contact area. Our scrum and line-out didn't function particularly well. We didn't get enough ball, and then we didn't use the ball correctly. We some of those things out against Scotland, but I'd like to see us go a bit, more hard-nosed against England, because I generally think this England side, I would have preferred to play against this England because it looks like there's a few frailties there. You know what I mean? If you can get on top of them, if you can get your scrum going, and if you can get, you can get into the midfield. You can get, all of a sudden then, you can see a few cracks opening up, and depending on who England pick in those areas, so I would say to the Welsh side this weekend, you know what I mean, we need to go there hard nosed. We need to make sure this is good. We need to make sure we win the line out. We need to get John Davis if picked, or Owen Watkins if he picked. We need to get them over the game now. We need to get the big ball carriers in over that contact area. Anytime England have the ball, I would flood it with people. I would actually, the first 2 people near the contact area, get over there, get your hands on the ball, make a nuisance, slow that English ball down. And if you could do that, you can frustrate England. But if you don't, and they get on the front foot, then it's going to be a tough day at the office.
Scott, but we won't have long to wait now, will we? It's great to speak to you as always, mate. Take care.
My pleasure. Cheers, boys.
Well, that's Scott's template for winning at Twickenham. He's not far off, is he?
No, he's not. I think it's, I'm really looking forward to this game, not only because there's only a couple of games this year at Twickenham, but I think there's something always there underlying this fixture, isn't there, between England and Wales. There's a real desire to get one over on the other nation.
I tell you what is interesting, talking about the forward battle. Courtney Law's return, and I'm sure he will return, will bring extra bulk into the England back row, an extra line-out option, and put Itoje back where I think he's better anyway, in the second row. So I think that's a positive thing. The only difficulty with all these things is Tuilagi returns, this is prospectively, and Laws returns, you're still playing in units that are not untested, but, haven't had the runs out against, test match opposition. So whatever qualities there are there, there's a little bit of uncertainty as to whether they'll go well. They could go as well as you like in training. That's not quite the same as it is under the pressure of an international.
No, but look, I think we both know the impact that those two players specifically could have on this England team, both ball in hand and more importantly defensively. I think Scott's highlighting how Wales need to get over the gain line. Well, those two fellas could have a big impact on meeting them at the gain line.
You were in Stade de France last week. It was a strange game at one point, wasn't it? I thought they were going to run away with it, and then Ireland just kept in there. And in the end, I'm not saying should, but could have won.
Yeah, I mean, what a fantastic... It's the first time I've ever been to the Stade de France. And to be commentating on a game like that, where all the fans were back in and going absolutely bonkers. For France to have scored early, I think made a big difference because it added a huge amount to the game straight away. But yeah, I did at one point think that this was going to unravel pretty badly for Ireland, and they somehow managed to find a way back into the game. I think what's frightening for other teams that are playing against France, and I was talking about it just before I came in here, is the size of the replacements that come on for France. It's just, what are they feeding them on? 4 blokes that are sort of well into their 20 stones. There's a lot of programme weight going on saying that they're sort of 120 kilos. But, the power and impact that they can make, combine that with the athletic and dynamic ability of their backs, which I think the nature of that back line at the moment is incredible.
I'll tell you what I'm big on at the moment, this home advantage thing, because I think... and there's no way you can prove this, obviously, but I just think it's a moot and an interesting discussion point. Had that game been played in Ireland and the momentum swings had occurred and the crowd had got behind the Irish in the way that they couldn't, obviously, down in Paris, it might have been one of these games where the home side, yet again, found a way to win. Now, France haven't played away from home, and the signs are that they are much more consistent than they used to be, and yet there remains a question mark because it's unanswered and it's unposed yet. They're at Scotland this weekend, which is never easy depending on how multiple factors transpire. I don't see them losing, but
if there's one fixture,
yes, possibly, yeah.
If there's one fixture that they could become unstuck on, I would highlight this one. I think it's supposed to be pretty grim conditions again in Edinburgh. The one thing I think that stands France in very good stead, the focus that Rafael Ibanez had after the game, as I was talking to him, they just moved straight on now. Yep. They're very different in the way that they sort of compose themselves. I think that might come from Sean Edwards. I
think it's a combination because Ibanez and Edwards know each other really well from the Wasps days. They're both... Well, Sean Edwards' contribution in rugby union is legend now and his record speaks for itself. But Ibanez, relatively recent player, so he knows these things. He's brought that sort of harder edge. And Galtier, quite against expectation when he's been elevated to a national coach position when they normally go batshit crazy in France. He's turned out to be a level-headed guy, undoubtedly with the influence of other people around him. And now you've got a very focused management team as well.
I think the way that you saw the coaches going around those players at the end of the game, they were obviously very close, and they're hugely focused. It almost, as you walked into the Stade de France, you felt like not only the team, but the fans also felt that there's something happening within French rugby that is really pulling towards France 2023. And I think for World Rugby, that's and all the other teams going to the World Cup, they need to pay attention to this team because they're going to be a huge threat.
Well, it makes it great for the tournament. It's always good for the tournament when the host side does well. And, I'm of the opinion now, I just want a Northern Hemisphere side, to do the business because it's one World Cup only. That's all the Northern Hemisphere has got, no matter how many finals they've been there. And, for the balance of rugby, I would like it to be another one.
I think let's not just talk about France from that fixture, but Ireland, in terms of the way Andy Farrell was fairly measured in the way that he spoke after the game. I think Ireland have to play games now without Johnny Sexton, a bit like England with Manu Tuilagi.
But funny you should say that, because everyone's been saying it, and so have I. Will he? Can he really see? All the signs are, barring injury and whatever, he's perfectly capable of keeping himself fit, sharp, right up to, which is 18 months only now, and he is a considerable asset. They can play without him, but they are much, much better with him.
Yeah, look, Carberry's shown, I think, especially in France, he hit some pretty big kicks over there from tight positions. He obviously managed their win or the end of the game against the All Blacks in November. And I think he's shown that he's very capable of stepping into Sexton's shoes. But should something happen to Sexton, which it does, they need to know where they're going to turn. And I'm not sure they're inclined to go anywhere else just yet.
Well, a big story emerged last week suggesting that South Africa would be replacing Italy in the Six Nations from 2025. It has since been denied firmly by the organisers, but let's speak to Marco Bortolami, the Benetton Treviso head coach and former captain of Italy, who is on the line now. Hello, Marco.
Hello, Brian. Hello, everybody.
What did you think when you first heard this story?
Well, it's something that's come up, in the last few years, honestly. Obviously, Italy's result hasn't been good enough. But, bringing him a different team, and especially a team outside Europe, it doesn't make that sense to me. Obviously, we have been disappointed or surprised in Italy because the Six Nations is a big value for us in terms of exposure of the sport in Italy, and commercial wise as well. We got to stay in the Six Nations and we got to be as competitive as possible.
Well, let me read the statement out from the Six Nations. It says, Six Nations Rugby, comprising the 6 unions and federations and CVC, wish to confirm that they are not entertaining any discussion nor developing any plans to add or replace any participating union. All its energy is focused on the current strategic discussions regarding the July and November international windows and the structure of the global season, and to ensure a positive outcome for the development of the game. Now, that is a strong denial from the Six Nations. Do you think that will be the end of this story, or do you suspect something is going on behind the scenes?
I think there's probably commercial reasons why the Six Nations would be interested to involve South Africa in the tournament, and that's purely on TV money and commercial opportunities. But my question is, does it make sense for the tournament, for the history of the tournament, and for the supporters as well? If the Six Nations is going to be involved in a global season, in a global tournament, and then we have a separate trophy, that maybe makes sense, to shift some of the games of the November windows in a different period, maybe during the Six Nations. But honestly, to involve another team and South Africa in the Six Nations, no, it doesn't make that sense.
Marco, if this did happen, what would it do to Italian rugby?
To be completely honest and straightforward, it's going to be a disaster. First of all, because our sport is not, is growing, but Six Nations is the most important time of the year for rugby in Italy. It's the only period where rugby is, sometimes on the front page on the newspapers if we get a big win. So, it's going to be a disaster.
Look, everyone is disappointed in Italy's results. I'm sure no more than you and the rest of the people involved in Italian rugby. So what hope is there for the future that you can get better? I mean, the problem is when Italy make strides forward and start to get better, then so do all the other teams as well. So it's very difficult in that sense. What is coming up that gives you hope?
As you said, everyone tried to get better. What gives me hope is the performance on the 20s last year and this year as well. Italy beat England 2 weeks ago, and they will compete hard against Ireland next week. And that we got to make sure those players, or at least the majority of those players, can make the next step into professional rugby. Benetton and Zibre play a big part, and that's my job at the moment, to make sure those young players have opportunities. And this year we developed Menoncello and Marine that are, even if they're still under 20s, they are involved with the senior team in the Six Nations. So we got to make sure we create a pathway between under 20s and the professional rugby, which is not easy. It's not easy because we only have 2 teams. But we can make it work, and that what gives me hope, because we see a lot of young talent and physical potential coming through. On the other side, in the last few years, we lost many games that we could have won. So we got to make sure then the rugby side, at the very top end, we learn the lessons and then we deliver on the day.
Marco, I'm in full agreement with you that we shouldn't have South Africa entering into the Six Nations as is. With regards to promotion and relegation, do you think that's a fair enough argument from some of those people that are sort of talking about it as an option?
Yeah, again, it makes sense from a purely performance point of view. So I think we don't have anything against it. Then on the other side, from a commercial point of view, what's happened if Italy, we are the last team who joined the tournament, but what happened if Scotland or Wales or Ireland has a bad year in the tournament, or even England? You see England last year, they had probably their worst tournament in the last 20 years. So what's happened if one of the other teams that, got to be relegated? So there's the big question is that, and the answer is straightforward. No one of these teams can afford not to be in the Six Nations. So we got to make sure. I still believe Italy is the best option, the best team outside the Five Nations to be involved in the Six Nations. We got to make sure we progress and we perform on the day. So to go back to your question, it makes sense from a sports point of view, from a performance point of view. It doesn't make sense from a financial point of view for all the Six Nations.
Just a last question, Marco. Ireland, the next game. What do you think about that?
Well, it's it's going to be a tough day. Ireland is they lost against France, but they have been competitive. So they're playing exceptional rugby at the moment. I think the quality and the rugby they play is outstanding. They play flat to the line. They're very physical with the forwards. They can move the ball. So it's going to be all around challenge for Italy. They got to make sure they learn and they use this game as well to understand, to figure out the style of play and the style of game they want to play, to put themselves in the best position to maybe have a chance of winning against Scotland and Wales in the last 2 games. So I can see a tough game for Italy. But if they use this opportunity to start to understand how they want to play the game and how they want to compete and be effective, can be some value. At the moment, to be honest, in the first 2 games, I haven't figured out how Italy want to play the game and different areas of the field, and that will lead not to be in the game at all.
Marco, I'm very pleased that you could join us. Thank you very much for your words on the subject. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Tom, so why do you were quite firm then. You no to South Africa as is.
Yeah, just I think the tournament, Marco mentioned it, the history of the tournament. Now, sometimes this game has a habit of thinking too traditionally. But I think when it comes to a tournament like this, the energy that's created at this time of the year, it's not a product that's broken. Now, I know it's taken in some substantial investment, but that doesn't mean you then turn it into almost like a global tournament. I don't see any reason why. Yes, it's a tournament, and yes, we should be talking about developing rugby, but as you hear from Marco, it's helping develop rugby. From my point of view, I don't want to be helping the South Africans develop.
Well, the thing is, I can't say where this came from because it's confidential, the source at CVC, but they didn't have any plans, as far as I was aware, when I spoke to them, he's quite high up, to replace like-for-like South Africa with Italy. They were more concerned with trying to get the global season aligned and get the autumn internationals and the Six Nations to be of better value. Now, whether that meant the bundling of TV rights, which would make sense, but would probably take it off, would take a lot of it off free to air, which I wouldn't be in favour. That's a different matter. But that replacement theory, I doubt whether it comes from them. It doesn't make any sense. And the thing is this. They've got to sort out the promotion and relegation, because until you give the Tier 2 sides in Europe and the Southern Hemisphere an automatic right to get to the top table, they will never become self-sufficient. However, you can't do that every year because it wouldn't work. And I do think the fairest thing would be to say maybe every 3 years or whatever, you play a home and away against the top side from the top tier, because then you could see whether they genuinely were. Because I don't think Georgia, who are the current favourites, are better than Italy. I really don't.
No, I think
they're very close.
When you come to that playoff situation, as they do in the top 14, bottom team goes down, second bottom plays off. You'll find that there is a massive gulf in difference.
The real problem is this, is because the Tier 2 competitions are not advanced, what it means is when you go down, you're in the wilderness. Whereas in the Premiership, or if you go down, there's a path back up. And if you're good enough, and they generally are because they're better teams, they can come straight back up. The problem is, if you haven't got a credible second tier, you're saying virtually out you go forever. And if you had a credible second tier, you could say, well, OK, get better, come back. And then it would be a thing. And it would be a better thing anyway, because it would be marketable and so on. So that's where they need to get their energy. And people are forgetting about this. The economic power of Italy and South Africa, I mean, Italy are a substantial country with substantial GDP. And you've got to remember this, the knock-on effects of this. Why would you want to have a Lions tour in South Africa if they're playing the Six Nations every year? Yeah. No, there's no point.
It changes everything.
Changes all the dynamics. What about the autumns? That changes those dynamics. As you say, it gives South Africa a route into the Six Nations to play all these teams every year, and then in their autumns, depending on what they're... I don't know, would they come back to Europe? Would they go down under? But people... See, this is where people think, oh yeah, it would be great. South Africa, world champions, etc., without thinking about all the knock-on effects, and they are there, big ones.
Yeah, 100%. And look at November. Look at the buzz that's created when South Africa do come up, because it doesn't happen all the time. The All Blacks are coming this November for England to play, and I know already that there's a huge amount of focus on that game from a fan's perspective. And if you create something whereby it's a regularity, it's almost like the tournament that wasn't really a tournament in November in 2 years ago.
Well, you could make it a tournament quite easily,
but everyone was a bit like, okay, weren't really that bothered. And I don't want to turn the Six Nations into a tournament where it's a bit like, it's all changed.
Let's get these things. People saying, well, we're just making it 7 nations. The reason you can't do that is there isn't room in the calendar. Now, I know people decry this point, but the calendar is so full, with rest days and so on, with one extra team. The competition stretches probably over another 3 weeks, because you have to have that another rest week. And it's simply too long, because you've got clubs who want their players back, and it doesn't work. So you can't do that. It never ceases to amaze me how simplistic people are when they look at this. That would be great, this would be great. Well, if you were to even consider this move, in my opinion, you would have to have a thorough study of all the potential effects globally for Northern Hemisphere rugby, for club rugby in England and France. That's a huge thing, because they are the paymasters, and you do this at your peril, because as you say, the Six Nations is the best international tournament in rugby in the world. It is making money. Why would you do this for the possibility of it being the arguable possibility of it being a bit better, and then not addressing all the downsides and dealing with those as they come? Premiership Rugby has announced the launch of a subscription service which will allow supporters to pay $4.99 to watch a single Gallagher Premiership match of their choice and $6.99 to watch all the fixtures from a single round of the league. What are your thoughts on this?
I think it's brilliant. I think the more ways that we can open up the game to more eyes and more individuals, the better. I think one thing I remember from playing in France is that all of the league games are on Canal Plus at various different times of the day, whether you're using it on red button or you're watching one game or you want to watch another one, various different times of the day, and all of the games get a huge watch. Now, obviously, that's almost the first sport in France, but I think this is a brilliant way for the rugby playing public to have access to other games that they wouldn't potentially watch, and not just the one that's being played by BT. And I think it's a great opportunity that Premiership Rugby have taken advantage of.
There must have been a contractual clause aligned to do this. Obviously, I'm just surprised BT have allowed it.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting that they would allow Premiership Rugby the chance to do that. Whether there will be BT will then take the games that are only in and around specific times of the day. Perhaps that might have some effect on what games are available. They'll obviously get first dibs, I would think, on which ones they want to take. But I think why not try and open it up to as many as possible?
Well, I was going to say that's all we have time for this week on Brian Moore's Full Contact, but there is one thing I do want to mention. Very sad news over the weekend. Steve Black was a key member of the backroom team at Newcastle and indeed was a mentor to many other players, not from his clubs, Johnny Wilkinson being one as well. You have worked with him. I met him several times. I didn't work with him. He always struck me as not a unique individual, but a rare one in the way that he thought and approached rugby. Tell me about Steve.
Listen, you mentioned the way that he approached rugby. I think it's the way he approached life.
Fair point. My fault.
I think that is one of the things that really stood out for me when I first met him. Is the energy that the guy had was just ridiculous. It was off the scale. The positivity, the drive that he put into young players that were finding their feet, that at times were finding it very difficult. He knew whether to give you a boot up the backside or give you a big blackie hug. One was decidedly better than the other, and you can choose which. I think the best way to measure the impact that he had on people is, no matter whether you met him once or twice, 2 or 3 times, or you worked with him as I did for 10 years, no one's got anything but positive things to say about him. And there are still things that he said to me as I was growing up as a young player, which actually it was more like, they're like life messages. And there are still things there that stand out to me, phrases that he used that I will, take with me through my life, whether it's to do with my family or whether it's to do with things I'm doing at work. I think he had a really unique way of looking at life, and I think we can see by the outpouring of emotion, not just in the Northeast but across the sporting world. Let's not forget he worked quite a lot within football as well, Fulham, Newcastle United, among others, and he's going to be sadly missed.
Well, everything you said there has been echoed in many discussions I've had, not since the sad news of his death, but before. And as his career was developing, and everyone has said the same thing. Steve Black, rest in peace, you will be very sorely missed, and thank you for your contribution to rugby sport and life in general. That is all we have time for this weekend with Brian Moore's Full Contact and the Telegraph. Big thanks to my co-host Tom May and my guests Scott Quinnell and Marco Bortolami for joining me. If you've enjoyed this episode, you can check out all our previous ones by subscribing to the Full Contact podcast channel. I'll be back next week to recap the weekend's games when we will know the result of the huge clash at Twickenham between England and Wales, and we'll see whether Scotland have managed to do what seems very unlikely but possible and beat France. Until then, it's goodbye.